It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Well, it's that time of year again. Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. Let's give you the starting lineup here. It doesn't change very much. Don't have a lot of substitutions off the bench. You've got me, Jim Meehan, the beat writer for the Spokesman-Review for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I've been doing that since 2008. I do go back all the way to the 99 run to the Elite Eight, covered those tournament games. And we've got my partner in crime here, Richard Fox, television analyst on Gonzaga broadcasts on SWX, Root, KHQ. Did I get them all?
Well, nowadays I think everybody's picking up each other's feed, so I don't even know what I'm on anymore. So,
Foxy, I imagine you spent the entire off season, summer, early fall, building up to this moment. Was that kind of your plan?
well, I woke up thinking about it, and obviously before I went to bed at night thinking about it as well. So
Yeah. Last night, then this morning. That's it. All right. Well, we record every Monday morning. Yeah, we'll be here with you the rest of the season. And you can find us on all the usual podcast outlets, Apple and Google, Spotify, and also be posted probably this afternoon on the Spokesman-Review website, spokesman.com. So check us out. Tell your friends. Tell all your Zag fan friends and spouses and everybody you know. And we're going to come at you every Monday with the latest information on Gonzaga basketball. So let's get to it. Zags haven't played a game yet. They open against Yale on Friday, but they have had craziness in the kennel. They have had a closed scrimmage in Phoenix against the Baylor Bears, and they thumped LCSC, Lewis Clark State, in an exhibition game on Friday. So we've got a few looks at these guys. I think the most meaningful of all those was probably beating Baylor 81-78 down in Phoenix. All five starters scored in double figures. You had Anton Watson, the senior citizen of this squad, with 17. You have Nolan Hickman, I believe, had 17. He's back as a starter as well. And then you had the new guys, Graham Ike, Wyoming transfer, 11 points in 20 minutes. You had Ryan Nemhart, I think, had 12 points. He's from Creighton, and Eastern Washington's transfer, Steele Venters, also had 12. Obviously, to me, the most meaningful of all those was Graham Ike. He came back with 24 points in 19 minutes against LCSC. Did not play last year with a foot injury. Did not play in craziness. They put a lot of caution in his recovery to kind of time it out with the season and have him at full speed. He's working on his wind. His minutes will have to go up and up. But his game, there was no rust on that court against Lewis Clark State. A little tough to judge. They were so much smaller in the front court. But Graham Ike, to me, looked like I was watching Sam Dower's touch and maybe a combination with DeMontis Sabonis power moves in there. Those two lefties from Gonzaga's past. What'd you think of Graham?
I like him a lot. I think that's the key point, though, that you mentioned with respect to his wind. When his last full season at Wyoming, when he effectively averaged a double-double, he played 31 minutes a game. It feels like he's a ways away from being able to do that, even against LC State. You saw in the first half, he kind of started to get run down, and throughout the offseason, they've really tried to protect his foot, protect his condition, and really clearly have a plan, a program to ramp him up. I think Mark said after that game that, the idea would be to get him up to 28, 30 minutes a game. Certainly it's a bit hard to see how that's going to happen overnight. That's going to be something that they're going to have to build into. I think against Baylor, he was effective, 5 of 9 from the field, but only played 20 minutes. I think largely driven by the fact it looked like he had 6 fouls. It's going to take him some time. That's the speed of the game when you're out for as long as he's been out. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And Gonzaga plays at a much faster pace than Wyoming ever did. If people remember that team, Very slow, very methodical. Played through him a ton, but really tried to just bog the game down. Gonzaga certainly never does not play that way. So, but on balance, I think he's a tremendous pickup. Certainly very different than what Drew provided. He's not going to score quite at that clip, but shoots it at a good percentage. I think probably on balance will be a more impactful defender, just with his size and strength around the rim. I think he's exceptional at guarding his guy. You're never going to have to help if the other team has a low block scorer. I think he can probably hold up against anybody pretty well. You can't move him. Reminds me a lot of Batista in that way, back when JP was here. Really ground-bound defensively, but good feet, and just you could not back him down. And as a result, JP was really good at beating guys to their spot and force them to catch it further out than they might want to otherwise. And I think Graham fits that mold in a similar way. So I think just a tremendous pickup, and really important for them throughout the year that he can stay healthy, play with that foot, and build his wind up and be able to play 30 minutes, 32 minutes in some of these bigger games that they have pretty early in the year.
Yeah, just a key guy for him. They like to play inside out most years when they have these talented post players. And I think he gives them the chance to do that if he stays healthy, if he, does what he does. I mean, he scores probably 90% of his points within 6 feet of the basket, and just puts a ton of pressure on people too. The fouls, the foul pressure, the double teams and the kickouts, all the things that come with that inside presence. Anton Watson beat him, though. He had 7 fouls in that scrimmage. I think the record might still be Drew Timme down at the Tennessee charity
That's
game.
right.
I think he had 8. That's got to be some kind of NCAA record, at least a program one. So let's talk about a couple of the other newcomers. And again, key guys. Ryan Nembhard, absolute jet in the open court. He can fly down the floor. I think he's going to provide a lot of scoring, but I think even more than that, he may be in that 12, 13 point range, or, which is what he's done at Creighton before, but I think he has a good way of involving everybody. In fact, I think that looks more important to him than shooting it or putting up threes or whatever. I think he really is more of a floor general type, at least from what I've seen, limited minutes of seeing him so far. Steele Venters, the kid from Eastern Washington, is a very, very accomplished three-point shooter. Again, if this thing is going to work, all these new pieces with Anton, with Nolan, with Ben Gregg, and Braden Huff is really showing some things early here. Those 3 transfers and Ryan running the show, those all have to fit together, especially with those 2 other transfers besides Graham.
Yeah, I love the way Ryan plays, and I promise I'm going to make this the last time. I'm trying to make this the last time I compare him to his brother, because I would imagine that gets tired for him. But he pushes it the same way that his brother did, and that's what I love most about the way he plays. He just, and Stromar does this too, where their low gear is third gear, where they're just run-of-the-mill play where you just don't expect to really push the tempo at all. He'll just push it just for the sake of pushing it to see if something cheap opens up. If he can expose something, but it also forces everybody else to play fast. And just that constant pressure on the defense with the way he pushes it up the floor. And he's so good at probing and go either, with either the left or right hand. And, he doesn't play like a 6-foot kid. It's not that he's a vertical athlete, but because of his speed, he's really able to get guys on his hip, find ways to finish. I think he unlocks Hickman in a way that we haven't seen yet. Because as good as Nolan is, he is not a point guard, and he might dispute that and say, well, I can do that. But Ryan plays in that first and second gear, or rather Nolan plays in that first and second gear a lot. Very much, taking his time, the play needs to unfold. Yeah. Ryan doesn't do that. And I think that allows for Nolan to play off the ball, I think we're going to see the best iteration of Hickman that we've seen since he's been here. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up leading this team in scoring, not just because of what he can do with the ball when he has it, but his ability to, it now allows him to play off the ball. He's going to get a lot of open catch and shoot threes. So I'm Nembhard to me is kind of the straw that stirs the drink. Ike's maybe their most important piece because of what he does is unique compared to anybody else on the roster. There's no overlap with his ability to score with Watson or even Huff at this point. But Nembhard he's going to stir everything for these guys. And then, with Venters, it's interesting when you transfer, Ryan doesn't have to change the way he plays. They want him to do exactly what he did at Creighton, just do it here. And the way we play might fit the way you want to play better, and you're going to have more success. But really, just be you. I think what's going to be interesting for Venters is they don't need him to be what he was at Eastern. At Eastern, he got up 12 shots a game. I'd be surprised if he got double-digit shots. He had a lot more freedom at Eastern to create offense because that was a team, despite as well as they did last year. I mean, they had an incredible winning streak. It really was his show. They're not going to need him to do that. And I think there's a transition happening for him, which is how do I fit into what it is, how Gonzaga plays, and how I need to play with this group around me. So if he went from being the best player at Eastern, he's not the best player now. But what he is he's a very good shooter. I think particularly in the catch and shoot situations. I'm a little less optimistic when he puts it on the floor and tries to create offense. He doesn't have a great handle, and I think we've seen early on that he doesn't handle ball pressure well. But if he can get down to just, look, I put it on the deck once. If there's nothing here, I'm going to move it. He does a great job moving without the ball. And in Gonzaga's offense, you can get rewarded if you do that. And I like his length. I like the fact that I think he competes defensively for stretches. Certainly not a strong defender, but with that length, you can make up for some of those deficiencies in a way that you couldn't if you were obviously shorter, didn't have that length. But, Gonzaga's track record, Jim, as you know, is they found a way to kind of put these pieces together quickly. I don't know why we wouldn't see that this year. It seems like all these guys that have come in have come in with understanding that they're now part of something bigger than themselves, and you're trying to win. You're trying to go to Final Fours at GU every year now, and if that's going to happen, you've got to buy into what it is you need to do. And I think that'll be an early marker this year. Can Venters fit into whatever it is they want him to do seamlessly, or is there going to be some challenges for him trying to fit that, find that role?
Yeah, and I think he's going to be pressured, or at least have stiff competition from Dusty Stromer, 6'6" kid, freshman. He's a very good shooter as well, kind of like Steele, probably in that 38 to 40% range. But he showed the other night, and even in the first, craziness, he does a lot of things pretty well. He had a great pass on the break. He can really get out and go on the break. And obviously a spot up shooter, but he can bounce it a little, and he got on the glass. I don't know what he finished with, 6-7 boards, kept some possessions alive with that Anton Watson patented tip out to a teammate.
Right.
I think Dusty Stromer is going to push for playing tech, and he can play the 2 or the 3. He can come in for Nolan if Nolan needs a break, or Ryan, and then Nolan goes to point, those kind of things. One kid I want to get a thought on is Braden Huff. Sat out last year, but he clearly worked in that season off the out of games anyway, where he could work on his body and his game. Kid's got a very smooth left-handed stroke from distance, and is kind of he scored inside. We'll see if that continues when they start playing the better teams. I think he's going to become a factor in the rotation, especially if he can keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quick point on Stromer. I think his role this year is kind of like a mini, Ayagi. Just come in. I love how he's got a live body. He plays hard. He can do a little bit of everything. They're not going to run anything for him, but he's got a great nose for the ball. He looks to rebound defensively. I think he's further along than most freshmen. and he's a sneaky athlete. I mean, if he gets his feet right, he'll go up and try to to punch it on somebody. I'm really bullish on him. I think that's a good point about him pushing Venters, because there's a real difference between the way the two play. Venters very under controlled, an older guy, kind of doesn't sped up, but Dusty's just plays so hard. It's so evident. I've been really impressed with Braden. I mean, even going back to last year, he clearly can score it. I think it's interesting. He and Greg are very similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, both of them can stretch the floor in the way Watson and Graham can't. They will both play really hard. They both play with some emotion. Versus Watson's very stoic, and I think Graham is the same way, very measured. The difference is, I think Braden is just more of a natural scorer around the rim than maybe Ben is. Ben is just, he's just kind of a workhorse around the basket. I think Braden has a little bit more of a natural gift. The challenge he has, like any young player, but particularly bigs, when you're coming in from high school, if you're a high-level guard, you've played a ton of games, you've had the ball in your hands, but you're used to playing fast. There's an adjustment, but typically the speed of the game is not the number one adjustment you have to make. But for a big who hasn't played in effectively 2 years, let's call it, or nearly 2 years, sometimes when Huff has the ball around the rim, it appears he's really sped up. And as a result, he misses some easy buckets that I just don't think he'll miss come February. But I would be really surprised if we don't see a genuine 4-man rotation on the front line when you consider the fact that Graham's going to have a ramp up period, and throughout the year we're going to wonder, can he play in every game? Can he sustain that the way he did his last year at Wyoming? And then two, just the offense that Greg and Huff can provide all over the floor. Versus, in Graham's case on the low block, short jumpers, and with Watson, it's, he's opportunistic in the way he scores, but he's not a guy that you're going to I can't imagine throw the ball into a low block and say, go get us a bucket. Yeah. So I think Huff's going to get a chance to play, and I think that's a really nice combo off the bench because Greg and Huff can play together. They don't need to be out there with either Watson or Graham. So,
well, I think Huff can play with probably Benny or Anton. I don't see that pairing with Graham quite as much, mostly defensively, I would think. But, Anton could play with anyone. He could probably play with me, and I haven't picked up a ball in 30 years. I mean, he is that kind of smooth operator.
I'll be interested to see if we see – I don't think we're going to get a steady diet of it, but I could see it being worthwhile to look at these kind of jumbo lineups with Anton at the 3, for lack of, not really playing the 3, but defensively and rebounding. And with a guy like Nembhard, if you put Nembhard and Hickman out there, or even Stromer, 2 guys on the perimeter that can really create and play in the ball screen action, that's kind of an interesting idea, just because I do think 4 of their 7 best players are on the front line.
Yeah. And I think if Benny and Braden Huff can hit threes, I think that moves their playing time up, a couple more notches, because that's going to be a big deal with this team. I think that and rebounding are going to be key points for them. This is an interesting crew, a little bit like last year. We weren't quite sure. I mean, you knew it was going through Timmy, and he was going to get 20 a game, sometimes 30. But this year, I'm not sure who the leading scorer is going to be. If I had to bet my house, I'd probably put Ike as the leading scorer. But I think it's going to change hands between 3 or 4 different guys all the time. And it's going to be like the years when they had those great guards, maybe Bolden and Gray and Pargo. And, they were all, 13, 14, 11, that kind of thing. I could see that with this team. I don't think they're going to be as prolific offensively as they've been. That's not really a knock since they've led the country in scoring for 5 straight years. That's pretty hard to do, but I do see them being pretty good offensively. Defensively, I might have a few more question marks. than the other way. Who do you think is going to take the scoring title for this team? And what's your biggest concern with this team as they enter the season?
Well, I don't know why I keep going back to Nolan. I just think, and I know that's saying that seems like a huge jump, but I just think the fact he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands on every possession and he's a scorer, and the way he can shoot the three, and he as a secondary guy on the weak side, if Ryan can't create something for himself or the big, just to get that the ball swung over to him in that secondary action, I think, and I also think Ryan's going to occupy the best perimeter defender. So now there's a step down in the guy guarding you most nights. You're probably right. It's probably Graham, just with the way Gonzaga's played, and he can score it. But if I'll pick a dark horse. I'll say Nolan.
Yeah.
Because Ryan just has never been a big scorer. He's I think his assist numbers are going to take a big jump from where they were at last year, which were pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about their offense. I think they'll just do it differently. Certainly, you lose the best scorer we maybe have ever had at this program, but I think you've got more options to score. You've more depth on the offensive end, guys who can fill it up. So it might, to your point earlier, be more spread out. But I think on an aggregate basis, I could see Gonzaga being about the same scoring per game, and the efficiency may not be quite number one in the country, but is it top 10 probably. I mean, just the way Mark kind of has this thing going and the way that they like to play. They did a good job taking care of the ball last year. 11th in assist to turnover ratio. They were not bad. 5.5 positive 5.5 on the rebounding margin. I think that was a bit misleading. I don't think anybody would have looked at that team and said that was a dominant rebounding team. So I would agree with you. I think Graham is a better rebounder than Drew was. Just if it's in his area, meaning if he's got a guy on his hip and the ball comes to him, no one's getting it from him. I'll be interested to see how good of a rebounder he is outside of his area. But when you have a guy like that, think of even Holmgren or Shemek, that just they carve out an area around the basket that you don't have to worry about. And if the rest of those guys, Venters and Stromer with their size, Nemhard's a good rebounder for as small as he is. Yep. I think this team could be pretty good collectively. My questions are all defense. Last year they were not a good defensive team by any measure. Bottom half of the country in field goal defense percentage, 3-point percentage, and overall scoring defense. Can they bump that up to even 150th in the country? That's what I'm interested in, because Graham is not a shot blocker. They really don't have anybody at the rim. Their best defensive teams have always had size at the rim that can protect the rim. And they just haven't had that. They didn't have it last year after Holmgren left. They don't have that this year. And then I'm just interested to see, can Venters guard at the level Gonzaga is going to play, particularly non-conference? Nolan, as obviously talented as I think he is offensively, was not a good defender last year. Just didn't keep guys in front consistently. That to me is what I'm going to be watching, is can they shut team, can they make life difficult for teams? Or are we going to see a steady diet of blow-bys with the primary defender on the ball that forces all these rotations? I kind of need to see that to believe it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And creates foul problems for the bigs trying to help, and or help twice on a play if there's a pass off, and they do need to control the perimeter, the penetration better than they did last year for sure. Let's move on to Yale, the opener on Friday here at the McCarthy Athletic Center. I asked Mark about this after the exhibition game, and why, if they wanted to play a game tonight, the opener is tonight for most teams, or a lot of teams, November 6th. He said they tried, couldn't get a game lined up because it's not their way to always open up with a team this capable. You kind of want to have a little bit of more of a breather to break in a bunch of new guys than Yale, which has gone to the tournament 3 of the last 4 years, won the Ivy 3 of the last 4 years. got most of their key guys back. They got a first team guy back at 6'6", 200. They got a great point guard, defender. I think it's a very good shooting team. Wins 20 games plus all the time. This game, by the way, is on the schedule in this spot because they were supposed to play last year. And Fuey said that to get the Kentucky game scheduled, that moved the date they were supposed to play Yale. And as a result, Yale was able to play Kentucky last season in Rupp. Calipari agreed to do that and then move their game to this season with Gonzaga. So kind of a win all the way around, except the Zags got to play a team that's very old, very capable, and is really going to challenge them on both ends of the floor.
I can't imagine a worse type of team to play your first game of the year. I mean, I just don't know how else to say it.
I agree.
They've got a great coach in James Jones. He's been there since 1999, basically, like Mark, who's been there forever. To your point, last 4 seasons, they've either won the Ivy League or share of it, or been within a game of it. And they're just older, and they've played together. You know, I think they've lost one major piece from their rotation last year, but you know, they'll guard you. Top 25 last year defensive field goal percentage, and they score it. They scored 79 points a game and gave up 63. So you're not looking at a team that's just going to walk. I mean, they'll certainly be more methodical than Gonzaga, but they'll look to score. You know, this isn't a team. This isn't St. Mary's, put it that way. You know, they have the ability to score. They'll guard you, you know, on the 3-point line. They've got a really good collection of kind of wings and guards. You know, Matt Noling is, you know, a senior 6'6", kind of a combo forward. You know, averaged 14 a game last year, 5 rebounds, doesn't shoot it well. Only took 9 threes last year. Imagine Gonzaga will play off of him, but I think of a guy like Jackson at Connecticut, where he's a good athlete and they have found a way to play with him, even though he doesn't shoot it very well. So I don't know how much that will actually hurt Yale. They're used to playing with him, and he's been a big part of what they're doing. And then they've got Mahoney on the perimeter. I'm not going to be able to pronounce John's name. Polakidis. That sounds right. Both these guys shoot it at a high clip. You know, Polakidis at 40%, Mahoney at 47%. Both big, 6'5", 6'6", and then they've got the defensive player of the year coming back, and Bez Mengbeng. I'll have all these down by Friday, I promise. So I just, you're not going to speed them up. They're going to be comfortable. They know what they're doing. It's just it's hard when we talked about it earlier. You've got 3 transfers that are going to be asked to play major roles on this team. You've got young guys like Huff and Stromer who are going to have an impact and play. And on your opening night, you're going to play a team that effectively has played together the last 3 to 4 years and wins every year and is not going to be nervous coming to play in the kennel. So it's a phenomenal test. It's a sneaky big time game on GU's schedule. You know, I think most fans, when they saw Yale, whenever the schedule came out, probably didn't even stop on it. No one probably, you know, everyone thought San Diego State was going to be the best home game. This might be it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, when they see him in person, they will understand. They think this team isn't going to get rattled. They're going to run their stuff. They're going to do what they do, and we'll see if Gonzaga can do what they want to do against them. That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and the advantage Gonzaga is going to have is inside. You know, Yale doesn't have a body to go up against Graham, and Watson should have a good game, and I'll be really interested to see how Yale defends Gonzaga's size up front. Yeah. But you know they're going to be intelligent. You know they're going to have a wrinkle that's going to be unique, and I can't wait. It's I mean, from our perspective, it's the kind of opener you want every year.
Yeah, the trade-off's going to be them trying to guard Gonzaga's size and Gonzaga's bigger guys, and maybe a Nolan or whoever trying to guard a 6'5", 6'6",
right?
You know, bouncy athletic guy. That they're going to have advantages on each side, I think, that way. Let's move ahead real quick. we'll actually hit the final topic here. We'll go to the predictions. Always
Okay.
do this, Foxy. We got to put ourselves out there so people can ridicule us for the rest of the season and come back and point out, hey, you did this, you picked this.
How did we do
You
last
were
year?
wrong here. I don't know. I think we might have been
Perfect.
okay with Elite
Perfect.
8. I think we might have been in the neighborhood, right, with the
Okay.
Elite 8 picks. We'd have to
Well,
go rewind.
I'm just glad that we don't track it, because in my mind we were 100, bet at 100% there.
Yeah, no, we can rewind the tape and look, but I don't think we want to. So let's get it out there. This year, in the West Coast Conference, St. Mary's is favored. Speaking of older, proven, talented teams that just kind of play their style, much like Yale, the Gales are picked over Gonzaga to win it. Gonzaga is second. I'm thinking they'll both finish with the same record. They're going to lose to each other on their home floors. And I think there'll be one other slip in there somewhere, whether it's LMU or USF or Santa Clara, whoever. I have them both going 14-2 and sharing first. We'll come down to the tiebreaker of the second loss, descending order of conference finish to break that. But for all intents and purposes, I have them tying for the title. I have the Zags going to the dance again. What is that, 24, 25 years in a row? I have them going to the Sweet 16, which I believe would be 9th in a row. Nobody else has done that nationally. And that's where I have it ends. So my final record for them was, I think in the paper I put 28-7. I think they're going to have some losses in that non-conference schedule at Kentucky, in Maui. Three games in 3 days for Graham Ike, and Maui could be against, it could be against Purdue, Tennessee, Kansas. That's the gauntlet. That's 3 top 9 teams. So I have them losing some non-conference game, 2 in league, and then you lose 1 in the tournament, 28-7. What say you, Foxy?
How many? They have 35 regular season games.
30 regular, 2 usually 2 at the WCC tournament, and then whatever in the NCAAs. Okay. So if they're in the Sweet 16, 3 games for me in the NCAAs.
All right, I'm going to go on a limb and say that they only have 4 losses during the regular season.
Wow.
Yeah, I just think, I like what they've got going. I've drank all of the Nemhard Kool-Aid. I just think it makes a huge difference when you've got a lead guard like that. So it's probably bullish. Maybe 5 losses is more reasonable, but I think they win the league. I thought it was comical that the league, the coaches came back with St. Mary's. They lost Johnson. I forget the big kid they had inside that left.
Bowen, yeah.
They lost both their top 2 defenders from a team that was just as good a defensive team as Gonzaga's probably played in the last 5 years, and all of a sudden they're going to be better than GU. I didn't understand that. So I'll go on a limb and say Gonzaga sweeps them this year. And then I think that I think Gonzaga's. I think it's the same as. I think the ceiling for this team is the same as last year's team. I'm not going to be. It's a second weekend team. Matchups obviously matter a ton in the tournament, but I don't know why I wouldn't expect them if things go the way that health and all that stuff. I think this is an Elite 8 team, and everyone I say this every year. Everyone talks about the Final Four. It's really about that Elite 8 game. It's probably the hardest game in the tournament, and that's your opportunity to go to the Final Four. And I think this team, on balance, should be better than last year's team, and that may be sound odd given Drew's no longer here and Julian was a late first-round pick. Obviously, Bolden had some good moments, but I just like the makeup of this team in a way that I didn't like last year's team. So,
yeah. Well, Foxy, we'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be a very interesting year in a lot of ways. We have all the Big 12 chatter out there as well. With the Zags, they've been talking for over a year, so that's serious if they've talked that long. We'll get into that probably next week. So that'll wrap it up for the Zags Basketball Insiders podcast. Invite you to come around and check us out every Monday. I think we have a lot of fun doing this, and I think that comes through when you listen to it. And don't dismiss that Friday game. Tune in to Foxy on the airwaves and read me afterwards for the game recap, and then come back here every Monday for the rest of the season. So thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next Monday.